Amalia learned early that the world listened more carefully to men. Men were hired without questions, trusted without explanation, and left alone to survive or fail on their own terms. Women, on the other hand, were watched, warned, and weighed down by rules that had nothing to do with strength. So, when the ranch burned and her name no longer opened doors, Amalia buried it beneath a man's coat and became someone else. On the cattle drive, she was called Mal. She rode at the back of the herd when she could, a hat pulled low, dust caked thick on her boots and trousers. Dust was her armor. It roughened her voice, disguised the lines of her face, and hid the truth she carried tightly bound beneath her shirt. She spoke little, worked hard, then slept lightly, every habit shaped by the fear of being discovered. The drive was under the command of Elias Crow, a trail boss, known for running a tight outfit and losing few men. He rode at the front most days, straight-backed and watchful, his presence steady as the horizon. Amalia noticed him the way one notices weather, carefully aware he could change everything. Elias noticed her too. It wasn't the way Mal rode, though. That was good enough to earn quiet respect. It was the restraint, the way she flinched when someone got too close, the way she never joined in campfire laughter or crude jokes, the way her eyes stayed sharp, even when exhaustion should have dulled them. On the third day, a steer broke from the herd and charged downhill toward open land. Before Elias could shout an order, Mal was already moving. She cut hard across the slope, rope flying clean and true, turning the animal back with practiced skill. When she returned the steer to the herd, breathless and dust-streaked, Elias nodded once in approval. "You've done this before," he said. Mal shrugged. "Cattle don't care who rides 'em." That answer stayed with him. At camp that night, the fire burned low, and the men drank cheap whiskey. Amalia stayed at the edge, rolling her bedroll tight, keeping her back to the darkness. Elias approached with a tin cup and sat nearby without asking. "You don't say much," he observed. "Talkings never kept me alive," she replied. Their eyes met briefly. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, maybe, or caution. Elias felt it, even if he didn't understand it yet. As the fire crackled and the cattle settled, Amalia lay awake, listening to the night. She told herself she was safe, that she had played her role well. But somewhere in the dark, Elias Crow was watching the herd stand, watching her more closely than she liked. The trail had begun, and secrets, like dust, never stayed buried for long. By the 5th day on the trail, the cattle had settled into a steady rhythm, and so had Amalia's nerves. She rose before dawn, tightened her bindings while the camp still slept, and pulled her shirt on, stiff with dried sweat. Every movement was practiced, deliberate. No mistakes, no slips, no mercy for carelessness. Elias watched these habits from a distance. He didn't mean to. A trail boss had 100 things demanding his attention: water, cattle, men. But Mal kept drawing his eye. She rode as if she expected trouble, shoulders tight, gaze always scanning. Not fearful, prepared. Elias respected that. It reminded him of himself, when he'd first taken charge of a drive and learned the cost of trusting the wrong man. Late that afternoon, the sky darkened suddenly, clouds rolling in fast and low. Thunder growled over the plains, sending unease through the herd. Elias barked orders, splitting riders to keep the cattle moving steady. Amalia found herself riding flank, her horse tense beneath her as rain began to fall in heavy sheets. A crack of lightning spooked the cattle. They surged sideways, hooves tearing up mud. Amalia leaned low, shouting, pushing her horse hard to block a break. Another rider slipped in the mud and nearly went under the herd. Without thinking, Amalia veered toward him, grabbing his reins and hauling him upright before he could be trampled. By the time the storm passed, everyone was soaked, shaking, and alive. Elias rode up beside her as the herd slowed. "You saved him," he said. Amalia shrugged, trying to keep her voice even. "Did what needed doing." He didn't hesitate. She didn't answer. Hesitation had never been an option in her life. That night, the camp was quiet. The storm had wrung the men out, and even the usual talk faded quickly. Amalia sat apart, drying her boots by the fire. Elias approached again, slower this time, as if giving her space to object. "You ever think about settling somewhere?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. She stared into the fire. "No, why not? Places expect things from you." Elias studied her face, the sharp cheekbones, the intensity she tried to hide beneath dirt and shadow. "So do people." She glanced at him then, her eyes dark and guarded. "That's worse." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with things, neither said. Elias noticed her hand scarred, capable, trembling, just slightly, now that the day's danger had passed. "You don't have to talk," he said quietly. "I won't pry." Amalia nodded, relief and tension twisting together in her chest. "Appreciate that." As he stood to leave, a careless rider stumbled past and bumped her shoulder hard. Instinctively, Amalia recoiled, pulling away too sharply, her hand flying to her chest. Elias saw it. The movement was small, but it was wrong. He said nothing, didn't look back. But as he lay awake later, staring at the stars, the image replayed in his mind. The way Mal guarded herself, the way she held her breath when touched, the way her body carried a secret too carefully. Elias wasn't sure what the truth was yet, but he was certain of one thing. Mal was not who she claimed to be, and whatever she was hiding, the trail was slowly closing in around it. The land changed as the drive pushed north. Flat plains gave way to rougher ground, dotted with scrub and shallow ravines that invited trouble. Elias doubled the watches without explanation, posting riders in pairs and keeping the herd tighter than before. The men grumbled, but they trusted him. He'd never led them wrong. Amalia noticed the change immediately. She also noticed that Elias began placing himself near her, more often, ever hovering. Never obvious, but close enough that she felt his presence, like a hand at her back. It unsettled her. Protection was a luxury she couldn't afford, especially from the one man most likely to see through her disguise. On the 8th night, the trouble came quietly. Amalia was riding first watch when she heard Ita's soft scrape of boots against stone. Out of place in the steady night sounds. She slid from her horse without a word, moving low, her heart pounding. Moonlight caught a shape near the ravine. A man watching the herd. She raised her pistol. "Step out," she called. The figure bolted. Amalia ran after him, ignoring the voice in her head, telling her not to chase alone. The ground gave way suddenly, and she went down hard, sliding into the ravine. Pain flared through her ribs as she landed. The man loomed above her, knife flashing. A gunshot shattered the night. The man fell backward, disappearing into the dark. Elias dropped into the ravine moments later, breath hard, eyes blazing. He grabbed Amalia by the shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She tried to pull away, but her strength faltered. He steadied her without thinking, his hands firm and protective. Her hat slipped free, tumbling into the dirt. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Moonlight revealed what dust and shadows had hidden. Amalia closed her eyes. Elias exhaled slowly. "Amalia," he said, the name fitting her like truth. She swallowed. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this. You shouldn't have to hide, just to live," he replied. They climbed out in silence. Elias said nothing to the others, only that he'd chased off a would-be thief. He positioned Amalia near the fire and handed her a blanket without comment. Later, when the camp slept, Elias sat beside her again. "Why?" he asked gently. .com. She stared into the flames. "Because no one would hire me. Because I needed work. Because pretending was safer than starving." He nodded, understanding more than she expected. "You ride better than most men I've known." "That won't matter. If they know, they won't," he said. "Not from me." Emotion tightened her throat. "You don't owe me that." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm choosing it." Their eyes met, something dangerous and tender passing between them. Elias felt the pull. Then not just protectiveness, but admiration, desire, restrained by respect. Amalia felt it too, and it terrified her more than any rustler. "Nothing changes," she said firmly. "If I finish the drive, I leave." Elias looked away, toward the dark horizon. "We'll see." As he stood, Amalia watched him go, her heart heavy with relief and uncertainty. Her secret was no longer hers alone. And somehow, in trusting Elias Crow, she had risked more than her disguise. She had risked her heart. By the time the drive reached the narrow stretch of land known as Devil's Bend. Tension rode the air as thick as dust. The canyon walls pressed close, sound carrying strangely through the stone. Elias didn't like it. He kept the herd tight and the men closer, his eyes never still. Amalia felt it tightening in her chest, the sense of being watched. Since the night Elias learned her truth, he had guarded her with quiet precision. He never hovered, never gave himself away. But danger never reached her without passing through him first. Gratitude warmed her, and fear followed close behind. Caring for him made her careless in ways the trail would not forgive. They were halfway through the bend when the first shot rang out. Chaos exploded. Cattle surged forward, bellowing in panic. Bullets sparked against stone. Elias shouted orders, his voice cutting through the noise. Flank left. Hold the herd. Amalia rode hard, adrenaline burning away thought. She saw two men trying to split the cattle, driving them toward a hidden pass. Rustlers, organized, bold. She cut one off, firing into the air, forcing him back. The second turned his gun on her instead. She felt the shot before she heard it, pain tearing through her side. She stayed in the saddle by will alone, gritting her teeth as she forced her horse forward. Elias saw her falter. He reached her just as she slipped from the saddle. He caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her carefully behind a boulder as bullets cracked overhead. His hands were steady, despite the fear roaring in his chest. "Stay with me," he said. "I am," she breathed, though darkness crept at the edges of her vision. The fight ended quickly after that. Elias led the charge with cold fury, driving the rustlers off and recovering the scattered cattle. When it was over, he returned to Amalia, his jaw tight. He tore a strip from his shirt and pressed it to her wound. "You're not dying on my trail," he said grimly. She laughed weakly. "You're bossy, only when it matters." That night, Amalia lay in Elias's bedroll while the men pretended not to notice. Word had spread not her identity, but her bravery. Respect replaced suspicion. No one questioned why Elias stayed close, under the stars. He sat beside her, exhaustion etched into his face. "I should have sent you back." "No," she said. "I chose this." He met her gaze. "I can't lose you." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Silence followed, heavy and honest. "You won't," she said softly. "I'm still here." He took her hand then, rough fingers gentle around hers. The touch was simple, grounding, and filled with everything they hadn't yet dared to say. As dawn approached, Amalia slept, and Elias kept watch, rifle across his knees. The trail had tried to break them both. It had failed, but he knew better than to believe the danger was over. The end of the drive was close, and endings, Elias had learned, were often the most dangerous part of all. The final days of the drive passed beneath a quieter sky, as if the land itself had grown tired of testing them. The cattle moved steadily now, familiar with the road and the promise of water and grass ahead. For the men, the end meant pay, rest, and towns filled with noise and whiskey. For Amalia, it meant a choice she had been avoiding since the first mile. She could feel it in the way Elias watched her, not with suspicion anymore, but with something deeper. Hope. Maybe fear too. He had not asked her to stay. She had not offered. The unspoken truth pressed between them, harder than any words. On the last morning, they rode out before sunrise. The sky burned pink and gold, dust rising in soft clouds around the herd. Amalia's side still ached, but she sat straight in the saddle, determined not to be remembered as fragile. Elias rode beside her, silent, respectful of the space she needed to think. When the herd was finally turned over, and the men began to drift away, Amalia stood apart, her hat in her hands. The disguise felt heavier now than it ever had before. She loosened the bindings beneath her shirt and breathed deeply, as if learning how to exist again. Elias approached, stopping a few steps away. "You could head east," he said. "There's work there, ranches that pay fair." She nodded. You could also stay," he added quietly. "I've got land that needs hands, and a partner who knows the trail." She looked up at him then, eyes shining. "You're not asking me to be something I'm not." "No," he said firmly. "I'm asking you to be exactly who you are." Emotions swelled in her chest, threatening to spill over. She had spent so long surviving that she hadn't known how badly she wanted to live. Amalia stepped closer. "I won't hide again." "You won't have to," Elias said. She reached for him first, this time fingers curling into his coat. The kiss was slow and certain, built on trust, earned mile by mile. When they pulled apart, the future stretched wide and uncertain but shared. The men nearby pretended not to see, offering grins and nods instead of questions. Respect had replaced doubt. The trail had stripped away lies and left only truth behind. As the dust settled and the sun climbed higher, Amalia swung into the saddle beside Elias, not as a disguise, not as a secret, but as his equal. Together, they rode toward what came next. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.